This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of BC, brought to you by Sitka Gear. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Yeti. Thank you Sitka Gear and Yeti for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems. Well, Mr. Barker, we got a couple cold ones here, and we get to do this face-to-face.
Yeah, that's a change, isn't it? Instead of on a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, it's kind of a treat. These are always fun because you get the energy and then also to have a cool refreshment. So
Summer Coronas with some lime in them.
Yeah. So we can't even talk sheep beers or anything. So actually, we're about due for a new one, I think. So we'll have to reach out to Trench and see what we got. We've done what have we done? We've done the two. We've done our California Common, and then before that, we did our. What was the first one that we did?
Wasn't it the Stone Sheep? Was the Stone Sheep the second one?
Was the California Common the first one?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Stone Sheep.
Okay. So we'll have to reach out to them and get something going for the wintertime, maybe a stout or something, right?
We need some beers.
Yeah.
Some winter beers.
Yeah. And, of course, we've had our series of whiskeys. So we've had the most recent one was the Chadwick. The first one was the
Blue Bunch.
The Blue Bunch. Yeah, exactly. So we're due for a new one there too. So we've been working hard on that behind the scenes. It's been a little bit quiet lately, but we'll have something for the winter season. I anticipate. So
yeah, those were good.
Yeah, and it's such a cool fundraiser, right? Because we're raising money for wild sheep, and that I've collected them. I've got I bought a few of them, and they seem to be going up in value too. What they were selling for $1.25, I think, initially, and the last two sold at auction for $400, I think. So
that was crazy in Kamloops this year. That was unreal.
Yeah, but we sold one at the chapter and affiliates.
Yep.
What did that one sell for? Do you remember what it went for? I think it was $6 US, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it was Craig Nakamoto that bought it.
Yeah, the Nakamotos picked it up, Craig or Kyle or somebody. And yeah.
No, Kyle bought it for his dad for his birthday.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, yeah, it's a pretty good refreshment for sure. It's they're tasty and each one's unique. That was one of the things with the Chadwick. It was pretty close to the Blue Bunch when it first came out. We're like, no, we need to tweak this, and worked closely with Okanagan Spirits, who we work with on that project, and yeah, it turned out really good. So.
Yeah, they've all been popular. Chadwick sold out really quick too, so
yeah.
I think I got a couple. I got one bottle of Blue Bunch left, and I told the wife she couldn't drink it. She likes that one.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should go get us one right now on the rocks. So
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Anyway,
leads to trouble,
as you say. But I digress. That's my favorite term of yours. Yeah. I love it. So. We always talk about different stuff. Usually it's project centric and Wild Sheep BC stuff, and of course we'd be remiss not to talk about that. But you've got such a rich background in hunting, and I'm kind of curious to hear the early days. I remember your first hunt. I heard it on Beyond the Kill. So anyone that hasn't listened to that podcast, I'll laugh my ass off for 45 minutes listening to your first sheep hunt. You came over from you were born and raised in the UK, right? And then came over to Canada, is that correct?
Yeah, I lived in the UK till I was 11 years old. Basically in the middle of England. I was born in York, and we lived in a place called Ripley, just outside of Nottingham, Robin Hood. Maybe that's why I'm a bow hunter. But yeah, moved to Prince George, and spent a year and a half there, and then ended up in the Okanagan.
So what was your first hunt like? Because your dad wasn't a hunter, right? Like he wasn't an outdoor guy. Like he's a business guy. So how does that work? How does Chris go from a young 11-year-old coming to Canada, and then all of a sudden you're a a very decorated mountain hunter? So talk about that evolution.
Started off with fishing. My grandfather, when we were in England, we used to go fish on the dams. So he'd take me fishing, and we'd head up to Dam Flask, where they filmed the Dam Busters. So anybody knows that old movie. We used to fish up there, and we'd fish up there, and I remember a story. We always used to go up there, and he'd have sandwiches, and he'd have a flask of tea, and we'd have a tea. And in England, they use maggots for bait, so I was drinking my tea. I don't know how old I was. I must have been 6 or 7, and I get to the bottom of my cup and there's a maggot in the bottom of my tea. As my grandfather dropped one while he was beating the hooks. There's this maggot whirling around in my tea. It's funny how you remember silly little stories like that, eh? But yeah, it started off fishing, and then when we came, moved to the Okanagan, the guys I hang around with, we were all fishing. We all fly fished, and same thing. You just head out after work up to the mountains, do some fishing, grab some beers, and there's a few nights we probably shouldn't have been driving home, but it was good fun. It was a really good group of guys, and we were pretty close knit. So it was probably 6 or 7 of us, and we just kind of just interate and started. We were fishing, and then Rod was a hunter. They lived out in Lavington, and that's how I was hanging out with Rod, and he's the one that kind of got me into hunting right off the bat. So ended up getting a gun, and I think the first animal I shot was a mule deer. But we were doing bird hunting too, so kind of the fishing, bird hunting, and then the deer process.
So you were just like a teenager back then, or was it you were kind of in your late teens, early 20s, kind of working for a living when you were doing this stuff? Or
early 20s is when I started hunting, so we kind of just fished, and mid-teens to 20s, and then started hunting in the 20s. And really, our first big trip was. The Kootenays were big. There was lots of elk in the Kootenays, and Rod's brother-in-law, Doug Field, he lived up in, he came to Vernon. He lived, and then he went back to a place called Groundbirch, just south of Dawson Creek. And Doug invited us up. He goes, well, instead of going to the Kootenays, why don't you guys come up here and go moose hunting with us? Me and Rod said, yeah, okay, whatever. And we kind of figured this was this big escapade to travel up to Dawson Creek. It took us 2 days to drive up the first time, and we had a trailer, we had a camper, and it was just like a big ordeal because we were going north, and then we did that once, and it's like, this is ridiculous. After that, it was a 1-day drive.
Yeah.
So yeah, we head up there, and we were successful on our first moose hunting trip, and we shot a couple of moose, and that just digressed, and Doug was really into hunting as well, so the three of us really connected, and we were all good. We were talking on, not Sheep Week, but with Blake and his son on Spike Camp.
Yeah.
And we were talking about hunting partners, and, I said I've been really fortunate with hunting partners, and that was really true when I started off hunting. Hunting with Rod and Doug it was fun, and yeah, we had a lot of great trips.
So that first moose hunt, were you guys truck hunting, or were you guys on horseback, or what do you guys? How did you end up killing your moose?
So at that time there wasn't as many seismic lines around ground birch as there is now, and Doug used to hunt the moose licks, so they used to have some tree stands, and we went out and we were sitting in a tree stand, and I think we spent the one night, and then Roddy went up in the morning. He went out. We all kind of walked out, and Rod shot his moose that day, and then I think I shot mine that evening. The moose came into the lick, and then so we quartered him up and let him out, and then we went back out. Doug had one horse at the time, and he goes, well, we can pack the meat out with the horse, but he said, you guys are going to have to pack the hides and the horns out. So he goes, the horse isn't doing it. You're gonna earn your medal because you got easy moose. So we had to backpack the hides out.
Huh. Cool.
So yeah, we got a few trips where we went up there 2 or 3 times, and Doug had a couple of horses. His dad had some horses, and we kept bugging Doug. Like, we really wanted to go to the mountains by horseback. So that was the transgression, I guess.
So with that, Doug was the gateway for that. He was the guy with the horseback, or did you guys start buying horses through him, or did he have the horses? How did that work?
Originally, so Doug had a couple of horses, and he said, you know what, before you guys go to the mountains, we're going to go do a bear hunt. And obviously there's another story here with this one, but Doug says, yeah, come on up, we'll go do a spring bear hunt. We'll pack up a couple of horses, we'll ride out, and we'll see how that goes, and see if you guys are ready to go on a 2-week trip to the mountains, so you're not fully committed. And basically we just rode from Doug's house out back through the pasture, and we were just camping. We're just heading out to Elliot's cabin. So I think it was a couple of days ride, and we headed out, and of course, me being young and dumb, I had to, I'll bring my hound. So we rode out. I had my hound. His name was Hoss at the time. And we were riding out, and we got into this one cut block, and there's a bear out there, and Doug and Rod goes, well, we'll just keep riding this way. I said, I'll just ride up a little bit closer. And of course, the dog takes off, chases the bear. Then he comes running back. The bear's chasing the dog. I think it was a bit of a rodeo. I don't think I got bucked off. I just remember, and all Doug says, stupid fucking dogs. So it kind of goes on with what everybody knows about me, right? The bit of adventure that comes with it.
Yeah. So it's never easy with you. There's dogs, horses, a bow, archery hunter. So, so you end up getting a bear on that trip, or what happened?
I didn't shoot anything on that trip, but Rod shot a really good black bear coming. So about, I think it was the last day we were riding back to Doug's place, and Rod shot a really good black bear on the edge of the river.
Okay.
I think it was, I don't know if it made, I think it may have made BC Buck. Was it like a 7-foot bear, really big black bear? So.
So did that hook you with the horse hunting, or I've never had and I grew up on a cattle ranch and did a lot of riding, and so I've got a bit of a disdain for horses from time to time. I'll admit that my dad didn't always have the best stock around, but so does it? Is that different? I know there's a romance around horses in the backcountry and stuff, and did it catch you that way, or could you take it or leave it? Do you want to do it again? How does that work for you?
It was funny. Me and Rod were talking about it. We've talked about it the last couple of years, and that's we both miss it. I'm pretty sure Doug misses it too. We did it for 20 years. We did a horse trip every year for 20 years. We haven't done one probably for almost 15 to 20 years now. And yeah, you miss the sounds, miss the smells, miss all of that nuance. Like you said, the romance piece. It's I think if you read some of the old books, Skook Davidson and, those famous outfitters and some of those guys that went, Leo Rutledge, they all had those big pack horses and the pack trains. I was trying to find, I haven't found the book yet, but there was a guy that used to come out of Fort St. James. His name's Cataline. And he used to run 100 pack horses up through to Fort Ware. And he'd come from Fort St. James. So those romantic pieces. But yeah, to me, it's the only way. It's that classic hunt I think everybody romanticizes about, and maybe it's Jack O'Connor pieces of that. But yeah, it's. I'm glad I did it. I'd love to do it again. But it's a working holiday. You're looking after the horses. You're packing the horses up, and yeah, there's a whole bunch of stories when we first went to the mountains. So.
You just about die a few times out there, or what?
Probably more from stupidity, but we always had fun. I think that's probably what it was. It was just fun. But yeah, I mean, the first year me and Doug went by ourselves. We didn't have a lot of horses, so it wasn't too bad. And then the following year, Rod came with us again. And then we were short. I think the first time we went, I'm trying to remember how many horses. I think it was probably 6 or 8 horses. And the first time we went, I think they were all Doug's horses. So some were pretty green. Some weren't quite broke. So there was a few rodeos going in. But then as we started to go more, we were up to 12 horses on our trip, because it takes, basically a moose is 3 horses.
Right.
An elk you can get out on 2. So packing all that meat. So we kind of figured that piece out. So we started taking more horses, had more, not as much gear, but we learned to, pack smarter. So, the first few trips we'd go, and I can remember our top packs being ridiculous. Like they were 2 feet off the top of the panniers. And it's just like rolling around here, and then they roll off the side of the horse, and then the horse is having a shit show, and he's bucking all over, and your shit's scattered everywhere. And so, I think it was a standing joke after a while. We used to go into the Bessa, so we'd go on through the bucking horse. And where we parked the truck, there used to be a creek that was washed out, so you had to ride through it. ATVs could get through. And we all had a joke. Are we going to have a rodeo before we get across that creek, right? And usually a rodeo meant it wasn't one. It was like 3 horses, and there's shit everywhere. So we'd be repacking horses. So it'd take us, what should take you probably 3/4 of a day, it'd take us a full day. Sometimes we were late. And yeah, it was an adventure. We learned a lot.
So when you're packing like that, did you have more of the amenities at home? Like, did you have a good, wall tent and carry booze with you and all the good food, or did you still go pretty lightweight on that stuff?
No, we had it kind of, like I said, once we started going in, we got it pretty dialed in. Doug was pretty good. He was a really good mentor for us to kind of, he'd been going with his dad on some horse trips. So it wasn't too bad that way. It was more our gear. So we learned how to dial in our gear, what we needed for clothes, what we didn't need for clothes. And that brought our top packs down. But food-wise, we always had bacon and eggs pretty well almost for the whole trip. Take a bit of canned stuff, and then, hopefully we'd shoot something so we had meat. So we kind of had all that stuff. We had a wall tent. We had a stove. So, yeah, we had all the amenities. Didn't really rough it too much.
Yeah. Is there anyone that runs pack strings that will take guys in the, is a packer? Is there a packer anymore in BC? I don't even know. So who was it at a souk? Was it...
So Guy Scott used to run the riverboat.
Okay, so Guy had the riverboat. Okay.
Yeah, and then there was, I'm trying to remember his name, the guy from, I think he's out Mackenzie way. He shot the stone sheep with the bow. It was a world record for a while. What was his name? He rents pack horses.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure if the guy running out of Tetsa is still running pack horses, so you can get on a horse, do a horse trip with him out of Tetsa. Right. And then run in towards Tushoti that way.
So Jason and Colin, those guys, they run pack strings. Do they have their own horses, or they I guess they must have their own pack string. They run like Dave Marsh used to hunt with those guys and stuff, and they'd horseback in. So
yeah, I don't know if they rented them or if they actually had their own horses. I mean, the advantage that we had was Doug lived in Groundbirch and he had a bunch of land, so but when we were going heavy, he had up to 25, 30 head of horses. Plus he had 3 girls, so they all had horses. So
yeah. And does he have that stuff anymore? Or is he?
No, he's I don't know if he's even got any horses left anymore.
Okay.
Like if we were going to go back to the mountains, we'd be back to the rodeos and some really sore bones instead of some young bones.
Do you think you'll ever do it again?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. Definitely miss it. Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, and once we got going, we were taking our green horses and we'd come back and we'd take the girls' horses and we'd break them and they'd come back and then the girls would sell their horses, and all of a sudden people were giving their horses to us to take to the mountains, so they come back broke.
Huh, that's cool.
Or green broke anyway. So, we could pack them going in, and then once they were a bit tired, we can kind of jump on them and start riding them around the mountains, and they learn pretty quick when they're tired.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was did a fly-in trip there last year. We ran into the guide, and he had run a pack string, and we were camped along the river. We come off the mountain, we're camped along the river, and he came by in his pack string, and and eventually we caught up with him. They stopped for camp for the night, and we caught up to him, and we're the spot where we were going to camp too. And so we shared camp with him. We asked if they minded, and really, really good, 3 really good dudes, and the wrangler and the 2 guides, and got chatting with them. But they said that where they were, and I'm not going to mention the outfit, but they leave the horses, like their wild horses, they go and there's some that they can catch every year, and then they're all kind of hanging around together and they catch them, and they're green breaking these things in the summertime, and so it's a bit of a rodeo too. The first, because some of them have never been in the mount, like have been in a string before. So I was blown away that they just leave them there. They live and die there. Like they don't trail them in and trail them out. So yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, and that comes back to almost to those old West days, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost like John Wayne. I think a lot of that John Wayne kind of was probably a hero to a lot of us potentially. Yeah. And just watching those movies, I think probably that's where a lot of it comes from.
Right. Yeah. Pretty cool. So let's just move a little forward here and talk a little bit about your first mountain hunt for sheep or like goats or whatever. I think you talked about that. You did a fly-in trip, and it was a bit of a shit show. Was that your first hunt in the mountains for sheep, or I'm just trying to recall? That's the one I think I heard about on the journal.
Yeah, that was there. That was our first mountain hunt. That was there. Yeah, I can't remember if we'd done a horse trip yet, or if we were I can't remember. I'd have to go back to some of my stories there because I used to write stories for a bit. But we flew into Tetsa Lake, and our plan was to hike over towards Tashodi. And so we flew in out of Fort Nelson and got into Tetsa. It wasn't a big flight, and we were flying in, and we got in, and we were going along, and we started to hike off. There was a couple other guys that were already in. They were flying out in a couple of days. So we figured, well, we didn't see them when we landed. We could see their camp on the lake, so we started hiking up the valley, and we didn't see them hiking up the valley, and we kind of got towards 2/3 of the way up the valley, and Doug's sole on his hiking boots came off. And we said, well, there's no way we're going to be able to go across the top of the mountains with the sole off his hiking boot. We knew these guys were flying out in 2 days, so we thought, well, we'll go back to the lake and see if Doug had relatives in Nelson, so they were going to see if they could fly him a pair of hiking boots in, and we could go from there. So we, on the way back down to the lake, ran into a caribou and ended up shooting this caribou. I think it was the only legal one in the valley, so we get back down to the lake with this caribou, and these guys are back at the lake, and they were coming over, and they were checking out the caribou, and they were looking at it. They didn't really say anything at first. They were fairly friendly, but turns out they were COs.
Oh.
And there was one legal bull and one illegal bull, so they were making sure we'd shot the legal bull. So Urs flew in. He flew those guys out. Doug sent a message out, and he got some Adidas hiking boots and
Adidas hiking boots.
Adidas hiking boots.
Seriously,
yeah.
like, or are they runners?
They were like, I don't know. They were like a high top. I don't know if they were a hiking boot. They weren't.
They're like boxing boots or something.
Yeah, pretty much. But he flew those in, and then so we'd lost, I think, 3 or 4 days by then. So Urs flew us over to Tashodi Lakes, and that's where we kind of ferried that out, got the shoes in, and then we said, well, where the hell do we go from here? And we just kind of hiked up one of these drainages, and of course we picked the shittiest route. We had nowhere. We had maps, and it's like we're looking at it. It's like it's not like today with the Google Earth and all that stuff. So we figured out, well, we'll go up this draw, and we went up there and we forked out a couple of times. We didn't see anything. I think we saw some elk, and I don't think we saw any moose or anything. So we got up. Partway up the valley, and there was a tent there, but there was nobody there. And that's we found out later that was when the outfitters and the packers were having that big lawsuit, and the packers had to get out of the bush. So this wall tent sitting there. So we said, well, you know what, we'll camp in the wall tent and may as well live in a little bit of comfort. So we kind of camped out of there and hiked out of there every day and came back to the tent, and then came back in, and the packer. We came back, and the packer showed up and helped him pack up his tent. He was pretty good shit. So he says, well, you could try that spot there or whatever, or that spot there. And so we decided, well, the next day we'll give it one more shot. So we hiked up this valley in our tent. So this is the funny part of the story, like first mountain trip, right? So we had wool pants, felt pack boots, all in a backpack. Canadian Tire tent. It was supposed to be a 3-man. Doug's 6'2". Roddy's the same size as me. I'm 5'11", 6 feet, and Roddy's the same. So there's 3 of us sleeping in this tent, right, on the side of this mountain. In the middle of the night, the drawstrings flapping around. It's like, what the hell's going on? And like, is it a fucking caribou? Is it a grizzly bear? So I think Doug got up and went around, and he couldn't see anything. So it's like we all went back to sleep. Got up the next morning, and there's sheep right there. So like it's just horse shit luck, right? We ended up shooting 2 rams that day. I ended up shooting mine down where they were, and then the other ram went up top, and Doug got him on the side of the mountain and got him down, and so we hiked back down, and we had our 2 sheep. So the 3 of us packed the 2 sheep out, and I think we left our felt packs for the porcupine because they came in and raided camp and stole our socks. So they stole all the Rod's socks, and there's a trail of socks up the mountain. He buggers off one after we come back from hunting, and he's following these trail of socks and comes back, and he's got like 6 pairs of socks in his hand. So we got that. We got back the sheep. So we went back down to the lake, and I think we had 1 or 2 days before Urs was picking us up, and we're in the tent. Me and Roddy are laying there, and Doug was up. I think he was making coffee or something, and he comes back to the tent. He goes, "You guys want to get a moose?" I said, "Sure. It's meat, right?" That was our first mountain hunt. So we got a caribou, a moose, and 2 sheep.
Wow, sounds pretty rough.
Yeah. Wool pants, felt packs, shitty backpacks, 3-man Canadian Tire tent.
And not really knowing what you're doing.
And if it had rained, we'd have been screwed.
Oh, that's awesome. So was that, you getting your first sheep like that, was that the hook for you, and or just was it just kind of an evolution? Like, I guess you were already hooked on the backpack or on the horse stuff and already the mountain hunting, but did anything change for you with sheep with that? Was it?
It's funny because I think I'd always been fascinated with sheep for whatever reason. I don't know why. Like I think one of those podcasts earlier too, I remember flying to Penticton over Okanagan Mountain Park, and I'm thinking there should be sheep down there, and I didn't really know any better at that time. And like coming full circle, transplanting sheep into Okanagan Mountain Park after the fire. So I think I always had a curiosity about sheep. I just didn't really know what it was. And I think it just grew. I think that conservation piece grew from the Elk Foundation piece to when I got into the Sheep Society stuff, and then I think it just evolved even more. But I think I'd already shot that first ram, so it was that evolution, trying to learn where sheep were, where they are in the province, and that secretive knowledge piece that every sheep hunter has.
Yeah, the code, cracking the code. So your first one was a stone sheep, and then what do you end up shooting next? What was your next? And that first one was obviously with a rifle.
Yeah.
But at some point you picked up a bow and started hunting with bow too.
Yeah, so I think after we'd shot those rams is actually probably the year or 2 after that I switched to a bow pretty well full time at that point.
And what precipitated that? Just a bigger challenge?
Bigger challenge, yeah. I think, like I say, fortunate enough to be able to harvest animals with a gun, and it just, I don't want to say it was easy. I feel I was fortunate with a gun, and it was, I just wanted that challenge maybe. I'm not really sure what it was. It was just archery it was cool. It was unique, and just to get that much closer to be that much more in tune with an animal and watching what it's doing and trying to outsmart, outwit. Whereas with a gun, you're 200 yards away. You're still doing the same thing, but it's just more refined when you get into 80 yards, 60 yards, 40 yards kind of thing. And I think it was kind of, all 3 of us were into archery at that time. We were doing 3D shoots. So it was just a bit of an evolution, I think. But then to take it from the 3D shoots to the hunting piece. And like I say, I was really fortunate with my bow to harvest quite a few animals with my bow. So I think that just drove it even more to keep striving to keep doing that. So
what was the first thing you shot with a bow?
Holy smokes. Good question, Kyle. I'm not 100%, buddy.
Not a big deal, but just...
probably a moose.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think a moose. One of our horse trips rode into the Bessa, and we rode right up to the head of Keeley Creek. So the furthest place from the truck to shoot a moose. And of course, Doug's dad's giving us shit when we come back. He goes, "If you shoot a fucking moose up there." Of course, we come back, we got a moose on the horse. Another silly one, but it was kind of, we knew there was supposed to be sheep and goats up at the head of Keeley, not the head of the Bessa. So we rode up there. There was me, Doug, and Rod. We only had 1 pack horse. Same thing, rode up there, and I think all I had was my bow. Doug had a gun. We got up there. We rode all day. We got up, we set up a camp, and we're just kind of getting hunkered down. It was still fairly light out, and then all of a sudden this moose just kind of ran down, just right on the river in front of us, and so I snuck down and got into the willows, and I think I was probably 30, 40 yards from him, and he's making a wallow, and he's down on his knees, and then he's pissing and grunting, and it's like I'm sticking there with my looking at my bow, going, "You're a fucking idiot." And finally, there was a willow, so I couldn't shoot him right off the bat. So I was kind of there for a little bit, and then he took one step forward, and I was fortunate enough to get a shot. I think I shot. He was 30 yards, and shot him, and he just kind of ran, and I think he only went like 40, 50 yards, and a big bull moose down. So it's like I said, with 4 horses, like I said, we need 3 horses to pack a moose, right? So
Yeah.
I think I had my backpack. I can't remember what we had on. We either had 1 or 2 backpacks, 1 pack horse. Unfortunately, it was Spud, Doug's nemesis, but he was a big, tough bastard. And I think we loaded, I think he had the hinds. What did we throw on him? Hinds and back straps. Or maybe it was hinds and fronts on the horse. And then we had neck meat, back straps on our backpacks on the horse. So we had them tied around the saddle horn. Then I had Doug's backpack. I had the moose horns in the backpack, so I was riding on the horse with the moose horns. So you really learn to appreciate how a moose runs through the bush when he's got horns on.
No doubt.
Rubbing off branches and shit. So yeah, that was the first animal. Was that moose on one of our horse trips.
Huh.
So, and then we just kept doing that, and we kept. So they were kind of mountain hunts. They were more horseback hunts. They weren't really, the backpack hunts that we do, for sheep and goats and that kind of thing. But, Roddy shot a sheep on one of our horse trips. Doug shot a sheep on one of our horse trips. Peter did. We ended up shooting some moose and some elk over the years, and it was always good fun. I remember, we rode into one valley, and I think there was 10 bull moose in that valley.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just crazy. We ended up shooting 3 of them that day, but I remember we had a buddy named Robbie with us, and he was a pretty good cowboy, and he goes, "I'm going to lasso one of those." He takes off at a gallop with his lasso, and we're all shaking our head. He goes, "What the fuck are you going to do? You lasso it?" And I think partway through, he's getting close, and he realized, "What am I going to do?" Because he's just going to pull his horse over, right? So yeah, he didn't end up lassoing, but yeah, we had every horse taking that moose meat off that mountain.
Wow.
That one trip, yeah.
Yeah.
So the freezers were full that year. And then we had a couple of midnight horse. We'd always have a horse race at some part in time, so we'd race the horses up the airstrip. And usually it's coming back late at night, and you're kind of getting close. And the horses know, like after a few times, you're getting close to the airstrip, and you can just feel their steps, right? And as soon as you step on the runway of the landing strip, they're so it's like full on gallop down there.
Taking off. Yeah.
Taking off, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tossed off a few times. Of course, we always had that joke about getting bucked off and stuff. And that guy, I remember we were sitting up. I think we were calling elk, or we were sitting on a bluff somewhere, and Doug, it was a standing joke if you get bucked off. And I don't remember exactly what it was going to cost you, but Doug never really got tossed off a horse because he was a pro horseman. But we were sitting on this knob, and we're all sitting on our horses, and Doug decided to take his leg over and wrap it over top of his horn. And as soon as he did that, I guess the horse saw his foot on the other side of the horse fucked. He's on the ground. Both me and Roddy. That's a buck off. Yeah, he slid off in a creek once, and yeah, Roddy slid off the front of the neck in the river. I got tossed a few times. I remember going off. We were racing through a meadow one night, and the horse got a front foot caught on a willow branch, and she went down on her knees, and I just went off the front of her, front end, full gallop, rolled over, get back up, get off, laughing our heads off.
Huh.
Young and dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, what was your first sheep hunt with where you killed a sheep with a bow? Then what was that?
So I guess that comes back to kind of the second sheep trip I did. It was a riverboat trip. So I went up with Guy Scott, And went with Guy. And the first year we went, his boat was having issues, so I didn't end up making it up the river. We made it partway up the river, but didn't end up actually going sheep hunting. So I came back the following year. So the following year, came back and I was towing a boat up for Guy and Mike Southern and Ken Hamer were coming on the same hunt. So none of the three of us had ever met. And so the first time we met was in the bar in Fort Nelson.
And you guys met because you were boating in with Guy. Like that was the connection.
That was the connection.
Okay.
But none of us had met. We
Okay.
were all going. Guy was running us up. He was packing us up the river, and then we were backpacking in the mountains. And so I packed a bow and I packed a gun. But I didn't know. Just like, whatever, I'm taking a gun and a bow. If I can get one with my bow, I'm going to shoot it with my bow.
But just a question for you: the three of you guys were you hunting together? Like that was because you didn't know each other. So were you going on a solo trip, and then Guy was going to drop the three of you off at the same place?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay,
That's what it was. And then I don't think Ken and Mike had met either. So they drove up together, so they knew each other driving up. So
okay.
they we all hit it off. It was like I said, having lucky to get hunting partners that you end up with, right? And and all three of us hiked up, and so I'm packing a gun and a bow, and we got up to kind of where we were going to get into sheep hunting. And Mike goes, "Well, if you want to use my gun, you can use my gun and stash your gun." So I stuffed my gun under a log, and we went and hoofed her into the mountains, and Mike shot his ram. I think on opening day actually, and then Ken shot his on there. So Ken had gone on there was a couple of mountains fairly close, so Ken had gone up this other mountain. He shot his ram up there, and then me and Mike had gone this other way, and Mike shot his ram. So we got the sheep back, and then we were heading back down, and went back. I think we camped that night, and then there was a mountain kind of on the way out. So me and Mike, I think Ken had packed quite a bit of the meat down, and then me and Mike had we'll go up this mountain. So we went up the mountain and had my bow. We ran into some rams again, and I couldn't get close enough with the bow the way they were bedded, so I ended up shooting that one with the rifle. But the following year, so we got 3 rams on that trip, and then the following year we went again, and that was a story I told on Spike Camp. That was the first sheep with my bow, was that stone sheep when Ken was sitting on that Boone and Crockett ram for a few hours while I was messing around with my bow.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool story. Tell that one about. I know some of the listeners have heard that, but tell that one because that's worth it.
Yeah, so that was our second trip up, and it was in the same area, and we decided, we're not going to hunt these frontal mountains. We're going to go deeper. So we decided we're going deeper. So it was a day's backpack in, and then we camped in the bottom of the mountain and hoofed her up, and we got on top of the mountain. So probably 2 days in. So it might have been day after opening day. I think we got up in the morning, and we'd spotted some rams kind of over to the right of us, and then there was some other rams over to the left of us. But we had to walk around the bowl instead of going down through the valley. We stayed on top, so we kind of just walked around the whole rim and looked at these other sheep that we'd seen in the morning. Nothing legal, so we kept going. And as we got over, there was some rams down the hill. There was like 3 or 4 rams and a mountain goat all bedded together, and one of them was well over the bridge in the nose. So I said, well, I'll go down after that. And then right at the same time, Kenny spotted this other ram kind of up on top, but it was out of sight from where I needed to go down. So he goes, well, that's a good ram. I'm going to go after that ram. So Ken went over. He sat on the ram, and he's watching that ram. And we didn't know how big he was at the time. And so I kind of came down the mountain, got above on a little bluff above above the sheep. And the goat came out the one direction, kind of looked at me, and then he didn't spook or anything. And then the rams kind of came out, and the one ram came out. But then I didn't have a rangefinder. It was all guesstimation. And what did I shot? He was probably 40 yards, and I shot just behind him, or just below him. And so he kind of just didn't even know I was there. There was just like noise in the grass. So he kind of just bolted 10 yards. It's okay, now I know how far you are. And he was kind of quartered really hard away, so I ended up shooting him kind of back the liver, just behind the ribs. And then the arrow went forward, so I got an arrow in him with that one. And then I shot another one. I think the second one missed. The third one finished him off. But I only carry 5 arrows in my quiver, so I came back. I think my quiver's empty. The boys were laughing at me, but I think I had one arrow left. But then as soon as I shot my round with the bow, Ken shot this other ram, and it was a Boone and Crockett ram. It went 172.
Wow.
And so we had 2 sheep down again, and so we quartered them up, backpacked them up. We made it down into the bottom. There was no way we were making it back to kind of where we wanted to be. So we kind of just got on the bottom of the valley, and I think we were out of food actually, because we'd stashed some food. So all we had was sheep meat, and we got a fire going. We had some alder branches, and we're cooking up sheep meat. So we had a pretty good feed. I think we had some salt and pepper, but I think Kenny was allergic to the alder sticks or something.
Okay.
And his lips swelled up. His throat was, he could barely breathe. And it's like, you gotta be allergic. I said, don't worry, Kenny, we'll cut a hole in your throat so you can breathe. He just told us where to go. So he's like, because there's nothing, what the hell are we gonna do from out there?
Yeah.
So, but in the morning he was fine. We got some water, we got hydrated, and we hiked out of that. We got to this other spot where we'd stashed our food. Then same thing, Kenny decided he took all of his. So this is how tough he is, Kenny. He took all of his ram and probably half of my meat and took that back down to the river, down to the Muskwa. I was like, Jesus. And so me and Mike, we got back to our stash and said, well, we'll go up to this other mountain and come back. We'd seen some sheep there the day before, but we're already on the other mountain, so we'll go back up there. So we kind of hiked up this hog back, got up on top, and we're kind of right on top, probably halfway around the mountain top, and looked down. There's a couple of rams, and it was run, real big pig nose broomed off ram, and then there's this other one with lamb tips. And Mike got on him, and he got that ram. The frickin' bugs were so bad. I remember we were gutting him up and quartering him up, and Mike's just fucking, he's having a spaz because the bugs are so bad on his face. So he was just going nuts. So we managed to get that one done and got him off the mountain, got back to where we had our food stashed, and I think we got back and had a bath and kind of got cleaned up, and that's where Mike had his tie-dyed underwear because he spun them around a couple of times, but they had this nice tie-dye pattern on the back of them. Some wet farts going on.
Oh man.
So yeah, we got out and we were hiking back, and we got to where the outfitter's cabin, and the cook was there, and she was just heading down with a couple of horses, and we both had pretty decent packs, and she goes, oh, I'll throw them on the horses. The horses are empty. So we got back there, threw our backpacks on the horses, and she walked them off the mountain for us. So we didn't tell Kenny for a year or two there.
He's carrying 1.5 sheep, and you guys are carrying nothing.
Yeah. So we didn't tell him for a couple of years that we had an easy trip off the mountain with our packs. So yeah, that was that trip. That was so we had 2 years of really good trips, and that just cemented that friendship and that hunting partners. Kenny lives in Camel River, and I hunted cats with him probably for 10, 12 years. Used to take my dogs in the winter because I couldn't run them all the time with work, but he'd run them in the winter, and like I said, me and Mike still hunt together till this day, and
yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So you've done the jet boating, you've done the horseback, and so usually you do all the hard stuff when you're young, and then you get older and you do like the horseback stuff. But you guys do the easy stuff. Not saying it's easy, but so now you're doing the hardcore backpack stuff. You did a fly-in trip, and you guys did some pretty serious miles last year. I know, and I know you got another trip planned this year. So you're doing the backpack stuff now. And Just is it just kind of the circumstances that you're doing it that way, or just the way it works out, or just the way? I guess, like we said, there's not really a lot of you can't get horses these days. That's hard to get, and even there's still Riverjet Adventures. Obviously, they're still running, so there's options there. But is there one that do you like the backpack option, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's fun. I think it's the same thing. I was no one of the mottos, no pain no gain, right? So I think you've got to put the effort in to get the reward, and those rewards, I think, as you get older, change. When you're younger, you're very keen to harvest an animal. You're motivated to harvest that animal. And these days, I almost feel like we're Greenpeacers because we're just out there hiking around, but at least we've got a gun and a bow in our hands. But, to get an animal, we're looking for a specific animal. We're looking for an older, mature animal. We've touched on some of that stuff probably with your other podcasts and stuff, but about harvesting those mature rams, those 10-year-old rams, let those other rams bring the herd. Try and keep that maturity to the herds. So yeah, we're looking for something good. Obviously, I'm not as particular if I'm going to harvest enough. I want one really nice stone sheep with my bow, even though I've shot one. I was fortunate enough to go on a doll sheep hunt. Didn't end up shooting my doll with the bow, but we were we had them at 40 yards, and for whatever reason they kind of spooked out of there. I got a couple of shots with my bow, but it was like 80 yards. So I ended up shooting him with the guide's gun. Shot my doll, so that was a really cool trip in the territories.
Is it a territory hunt?
Yeah.
With who?
With Ganna River.
Okay. And was Harold running it back then? Was he?
Yeah, Harold was my guide.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
and he owned it?
Yeah, he just bought it off of Bill.
Okay.
So it was kind of Bill. We just booked the hunts when Bill was handing it over to Harold.
What were the hunts going for back then?
So my doll sheep hunt, I booked a caribou hunt for $7,500, and I think my kill fee for the doll sheep was $35.
So you're $11,000 for both. And what kind of class caribou did you kill?
I didn't shoot a caribou because
Okay.
I just went we just went for the doll sheep. That was we'd already told Harold I wanted to shoot a sheep. So
right.
But it was in a spot that Harold really didn't hunt sheep, so it wasn't as normal sheep country. There were sheep there, but Mike was after a moose.
Okay.
So we were kind of in a moose camp, and we just spike camped out. So I think I shot my doll on maybe we flew in maybe day 2.
Okay.
2 or 3, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was a fun trip. Then we went caribou hunting where we didn't see much for caribou, but yeah, that was a really cool trip. Territories are spectacular.
Is that right?
Somebody had an Instagram post today about the Mackenzie Mountains, and it may have been Rachel. Or it's either Rachel or Adam, I can't remember, but Foss. But I was just looking at the mountains. It's like, yeah, it's a freaking gorgeous place.
Yeah, yeah.
I need to go back.
Yeah, pretty cool for sure.
Yeah.
So for your evolution into sort of, well, talk about this. You've talked about this before, but for our listeners, we haven't talked about it on our podcast. Talk about the evolution of the hunter, like the new hunter versus the mature old hunter.
I think we kind of touched on it a bit, but I think, yeah, I know, when I was young, when I started hunting, it was, you were motivated by the harvest. You wanted to shoot something. So I think all your effort was putting to shoot something, and it wasn't really, but then I didn't care. Like, I just wanted to shoot a deer, right? I just wanted to shoot a deer, wanted to eat the meat, and that was it. Unfortunately or fortunately, the animals I ended up shooting were pretty good deer. Like I shot a nice 4-point, fairly young 4-point, but the second buck I shot went one. I didn't quite make BC books. What's BC book? 175. So I think he was like a 172 mule deer.
Okay.
So that really kind of hooked me into, looking for mature animals. Not that I was centered that way. I think we were still interested in the harvest. And then when we started doing the horse trips, it was meat. We didn't really look at first. And because we were bow hunting, it was like if that opportunity presents itself, we're going to shoot it. So we kind of went through this evolution of just wanting to get meat. And then as we sort of evolved, we started, okay, we still want meat, but let's look for bigger animals. So we were looking for, bigger moose with our bows, or bigger moose with our guns, or if it was elk, if it was, because it was all 6 points. If a 6 point came in, we were going to shoot it. But we kind of had that evolution as a group that we wanted to harvest and we wanted that meat, and that was our biggest motivation. But we sort of had fun with it too, because, Doug was shooting when we first met Doug, kind of reverting back, but he used to ride around with a 30-30 in his truck, and that's what he used to shoot moose with.
Okay.
But then he went off the deep end and got a 300 Win Mag. So it's like, how does this relate? And then, so, we're doing our horse trip. So, you're quartering all your meat up, and Doug's shooting moose with his 300. And it's like, well, there's the front shoulders gone because you shot it with. So we actually instituted a rule that if you wasted meat, it was going to cost you horse packing gear. So it was either tarps, pack saddles, pack boxes. If you wrecked meat, it was going to cost you something. So we had this. That's how we kind of upgraded our gear. We had this rule: if you wrecked a shoulder or a back strap or any of that, or a tenderloin, even worse, it was going to cost you. So that piece of that evolution, so I think that just kind of pushed us to be selective in harvest, selective in shot. Like I said, it was still about the meat. And then, that next piece was, we could do some trips. But when we started taking other people, where, it didn't really matter if we shot something, we'd take other people's. We were kind of mentoring other guys, that wanted to go on a horse trip, that wanted to just shoot a moose. And we could kind of just enjoy the trip. We still got to do all the work with the meat, but we didn't have to pull the trigger. And I think that just kind of started that evolution on to the next phase of, let's get out there. We want to get out there. We enjoy it. If we get something, great. As long as we're seeing animals. And I think that's probably that paradigm shift that's occurring right now, is there's not a lot of animals on the landscape with the way things are. So I think, if you're a young hunter going out there, it can be frustrating sometimes that you're not seeing the animals that we were seeing back in the 80s and 90s. But I'm also seeing some pictures of some decent animals starting to come back a bit. So I think all of us need to mentor that piece for the conservation side, but also to bring our populations back. So it should be the Serengeti of the North. That's what BC should be. And I don't feel we're at that point yet, but that's that evolution piece. And I think we've all shifted into, anybody on our board, I think, is into conservation mode. And we've got guys on our board that have never shot a sheep still, and as passionate as me and you about conservation. So I think everybody that's on the Wild Sheep Society of BC gets where we're at, what we're doing, what we're trying to do. It's just frustrating to try and get the bureaucrats to do what we need to do to get our sheep populations back. Mm-hmm. But that's been the evolution. And like I said, me and Mike went last year, and I don't even think we saw a sheep, but we had a hell of a good time. But you asked me about booze on those horse trips. We never did pack any booze. We packed one bottle of whiskey, and it made it 3 trips. And the only reason we drank it finally was because we didn't want to pack it the following year.
Is that right?
Yeah, we made up for it when we got out of the bush.
Yeah.
There's a few stories there, but yeah, we never took any booze in with us on the horses.
It's interesting. I'm the same. Like, I know, got a couple of buddies of mine that always love to hear about my mountain trips, and they said, do you take any booze with you? And I'm like, no. And then 2 years ago, we did a fly-in where we brought some booze, and we threw in a dozen beer and left them at the lake, right?
Yeah.
And we got back to the lake, and we're like, we should have some beers, and we're just like, I think we cracked the beer and we both dumped them out. We didn't even finish it. It's just like, I don't know. It's different when you're in the mountains, right? You just want to take it all in, and it's just, I don't know. And then sometimes, you're so tired, you can't even drink it anyway, right? Yeah. So it is different. So before we sign off here, how did you get in the conservation game then? So was it the Mule Deer Foundation you got involved in, or was it RMEF? I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it was Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
Okay, so
But
was that your first involvement, or was there something before that?
not really, Kyle. I think it was, I'd been doing the 3D shoots and kind of just hunting around, but kind of aware of RMEF. And then when they came to Canada, and then they had that chapter pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember being in Victoria, and I went to the first meeting at the Army Depot on Bay Street, and they were going to form an RMF chapter here in Victoria. And it really didn't go anywhere. And then some other guys got it going. So Gordy Simpson, Doug Sage, Tony Nowakowski, they were kind of three of the guys that kind of, they were on that chapter. And then I joined the chapter as a young guy. And then there was a Gord Gravel, Wade Banning. So kind of a group of guys here. And then we had probably 4 or 5 chapters out at Olympic View. We had 4 or 5 banquets out there.
What kind of numbers would you have for guests and stuff? A couple hundred?
Yeah, I think we were in that 180, 200 range. And then because RMF all had their own merch, right? It all had their logoed merch. So they were supplying the merch. And then, but, the big difference between the sheep world and what RMF does is RMF was modeled after Ducks Unlimited, where the money goes back to a central pot, right? Yeah. So the money was going back either Rocky Mountain House to be dispersed out for different projects around the province, or I think it did stay in BC, but I think I'm not quite sure how it evolved. So we did that for a few years, and then RMF pulled out of Canada and just stayed in the States. It's the same thing as we've discussed about the Sheep Foundation trying to operate in Canada and having this. And I think the sheep world, we've kind of got it figured out with our partnership with Wild Sheep Foundation, Wild Sheep Society of BC, and WSFA Alberta, and those nuances where we can work together, but we're still doing our own thing. But yeah, so once they left, it was like, wasn't really doing much. And Mike had mentioned to me about the society, and then I think we went to, I don't know where the first convention, whether it was Langley, I think may have been the first one I went to. I think so. Mike may have been on the board or got elected on the board. I can't remember if it was Langley where he got elected. So we went to that convention, and then went to one in Prince George, and kind of started that evolution. And I think I just kind of, it was very green and very young. And
what year would have that been, give or take? Like early 90s, early 2000s? Well, that wouldn't have been early 90s, but early 2000s? What are we looking at time-wise?
It was, my daughter's just turned 30, and she spent pretty well every birthday at the society fundraiser.
Happy birthday, sweetheart.
Yeah. Her birthday fell on our convention.
Okay.
Which was...
Poor kid.
Yeah. So it was good for the kids because they go skiing, they can hang in the pool and stuff. So it would have been back in the, late 80s, early 90s maybe. 30 years, yeah. Yeah, it would have been the 80s. Right? Is my math right? 23. Was he at 23 now? Yeah, 30. Yeah, late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because Jakab and Mike's twins are the same age. They were born in 96, so...
Okay.
So right down 94, 95, somewhere around there.
Right. Yeah.
So that, just kind of hung in the society world for the last 25, 30 years.
So you got involved, you went to that first show, and then, I guess Mike was involved with the board, so you started getting a little bit involved and stuff like that too. And tell me your first convention that you went to with them, or the show. I guess it was a banquet, and that was kind of it, kind of like a fish and game banquet almost, eh?
Yeah, I think the first one was at Langley, and it was a country club in Langley, a golf club.
Right.
Yeah. And I think we had a bunch of sheep mounts, and it was basically just the sheep mounts and the auction. That was basically it. So it was kind of modeled after RMF. You just show up, have a fundraiser, and that's kind of what the model was. So
right. There
was donations from around the province, and
yeah.
So yeah, that's what the first shows were like, and they were like that for quite a few years, and then it's just kind of evolved. And then we, I remember going from a 1 day to a 2 day show, and then we had some discussion about that. But it's like, if we're going to bring people from all around the province for 1 day, it's a lot of effort. So you're only going to get the local or within a certain area, like trying to get somebody to come to the Kootenays to the Lower Mainland for 1 day. And we were looking at, it's kind of started in Kamloops, because we went back to Kamloops when we were still a 1 day convention, and so every Friday night we'd be sitting in the bar till 1, 2 in the morning, or we'd end up going downtown to the country bar, and there's another shit show, right?
Yeah.
I remember there was one year, one of our buddies from up north, he came down, and we were at some country bar, and I don't know what the hell we were drinking, but we were drinking enough shit, and they were smoking cigars, and he didn't even make it to the banquet on the Saturday. It was at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and he did not get out of bed. But I think even Glenn was. I remember that might have been the same one, but Glenn Coonsel. I remember seeing him. Glenn was sitting on a couch out in the lobby in Kamloops at the coast where we are now, and it was like 2 in the morning. He's just liquored. Having a bullshit, but so yeah, there was a lot of early days. I think the banquets were a little quieter because everybody was always wound up on the Friday night, just happy to get together. So that's how the Friday night fun night started. Was we're giving money to the bar, and we're all talking sheep. Why don't we just have a fun night where we're in control of it and we can bring everybody on our terms? So that's how the fun night started.
Huh.
Because we used to have too much fun on Friday night.
Yeah, it was true to form, truly a fun night, eh?
Yeah.
Huh.
But coming back to taking booze in the mountains, me and Mike we take it once in a while. There's a couple of times I'll grab a couple of. I think there was a goat hunt. We had a goat draw up at around Lillooet, and I don't know how the hell I hornswoggled this one, but somebody had sent me some lobster. So I had some lobster, and so I had lobster, and I took a really good bottle of red wine with us. So we had red wine and lobster on the mountain.
Well, I always hear about Southern. He's notorious for bringing good food, good drinks, and the best of the best when it comes to camp, right?
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, we were up in Edzisa, and same thing. We had kind of a base camp, but we'd spike camped out, and we went for a big hike and stuff. But we came back, and I think it was the second day, and then we'd kind of scatter around. We were looking at goats and stuff, and I think I'd shot a couple of ptarmigan with the bow. So we had this ptarmigan, so we sliced it up, and Mike had brought some cherries in, and we couldn't eat them all. So Mike had rendered these cherries down with some brandy, and we had this brandy saute, and we just lightly cooked the ptarmigan, and then we put this brandied cherry saute over the ptarmigan in the mountains. It was fucking spectacular.
Yeah, I'm salivating over here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not like we usually come out skinnier, but this is the odd time we eat well, and I think we probably had a bottle of scotch. I think we usually have a bottle of scotch and some beer now once in a while, but scotch seems to be the main menu.
Yeah. Got to do something a little different. You need a new hunting partner. Have to go with you, Mike, I guess.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. Like I say, I'm glad I just I've told people lately. I said I'm glad I did what I did when I was younger, because trying to find the time to do it now would be almost impossible.
Right.
It's funny. You don't have the money when you're younger, but if you can find a way to do it, it's they're lifelong memories, right? And you never know what course you're going to end up on, right? I was fortunate enough to get elected to the Wild Sheep Foundation board. I was there for 6 years and still involved with the society. So it's been pretty fun, but I've also got to go on some gun hunts, some great hunts, sacrifice some time because of what I've done for conservation. When I was on the Sheep Foundation board, it cut into some hunting time, but I wouldn't trade any of that stuff. If you're transplanting sheep or whatever we're doing, it's just as rewarding as harvesting a sheep, or, we've kind of touched on that a few times. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been a great ride. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I can tell you that.
Well, we still got a little bit of work left for you to do too. So, yeah, I know you always joke around. Once you solve the disease problem in British Columbia, you can retire,
Yeah.
and that's the only reason. They've been close a number of times, so I've had to make a few phone calls. We can't afford to lose Chris. Let those fuckers still die. Just kidding, obviously, but
Yeah.
but. So let's talk a little bit of a legacy. You've done a ton of work for wild sheep, decades, and other species too. Like you talked about RMEF and other orgs that you support, Wild Sheep Foundation, the society. Is this a legacy piece for you, or you just want to do what you can to help the species? Do you think about leaving a better future? Or is that something where you're thinking about actively when you're working on this stuff?
You know what? It never really, not a legacy for me. I think a legacy of what we can do for sheep. So I think that's the society's legacy, is what we should be doing. And it's pretty frustrating because as long as I've been doing this, in my mind, our sheep populations are probably worse than when I started, which doesn't make you feel very good. But the hurdles and the roadblocks are there to try and do what we need to do for sheep. To me, it's so simple, right? Like what I do for work, we solve problems every day, and we've got to make a decision and move forward. It's not like we've got to wait a month because somebody's on holidays or whoever. And it's pretty frustrating when a minister can sign off on something on regards to disease and how preventable this is, and there's still nothing. Transmission. There's other people talking about why is this so hard to do, and it gets. I often wonder if it's not the politicians. I think it's more the bureaucrats, and I think somehow we've got to make the bureaucrats accountable and make the politicians push those bureaucrats to change what we need to change for wildlife. Because obviously, and again, maybe this is just my opinion, but I think wildlife is not valued enough by government or potentially the people of BC. And they need to wake up, because that's, to me, is the biggest thing is, and I've said this before, if you want wildlife on the landscape, it's yes or no. It's not maybe this, maybe that. No, we don't want this, we don't want that. It's make a decision, let the science follow it, let traditional knowledge have its input in there, and let them follow that. Blend the two together, and let's do something for wildlife. So the legacy piece would be to have our sheep populations be better. And that's kind of, I think, where the Fraser comes in. To me, that's a legacy project. If we can take that population from 850 sheep and return it back to the 3,500 sheep, that means we've done something positive. And we're on the cusp of it. But again, if we have another disease event, we could lose all of that effort.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, there's other legacy pieces. I think in the Okanagan, we can turn these pieces around. Like, what do we do about fragmented habitat? What do we do about Movi and Cerati's and our Okanagan sheep populations? If we can turn the tide on those, we still got to look after habitat in the wintering ranges and stop. We got to look at how we develop land for wildlife, that we're losing winter range for our wildlife. So it's whether it's mule deer, sheep, and obviously a little species in the Okanagan are affected by that. How we can't create more habitat, but how do we keep that habitat contiguous? How do we create this refugia for wildlife so they have a place to exist, and we still can get to go out and enjoy it, whether it's hunting, wildlife viewing, and we all want the same thing. We just use wildlife in different pieces, some of us anyway.
So if we're not doing that, if we're not looking after wildlife like we should, is it an investment issue? Is it a lack of planning and foresight issue? Is it a lack of importance of wildlife? First of all, you talked about not valuing wildlife, and you're right. Like, timber pays ways. Like, there's jobs, there's taxes. The revenue from wildlife. There's some ancillary businesses in the guide outfitting industry. It does bring revenue to British Columbia, but it's, you even look, the guide outfitting industry, how many people are employed in British Columbia? Hundreds, like not thousands, but you look at the timber industry, lumber industry, you look at mining, oil, gas, whatever, pick an industry, we're talking thousands. So there's that issue. But we look in places like in the U.S., there are some really successful models where they're doing really well. Like look at what Wild Sheep's doing in Mexico, for example.
Yeah.
So how do we change that perception here in British Columbia? Because it's right. We talk about beautiful BC. We talk about the Serengeti of the North. Meanwhile, our numbers are pretty bad in a lot of places. What's the silver bullet? What's the fix for all this? I know it's an easy ask, Chris, but
Well, I think some of it comes from, and we touched on in the summit, right? When we had the Sheep Summit in PG, all those diverse groups are there. To me, the only one that was missing of the key ones is industry, right? It's how do we get industry to the table? How do we get mining? How do we get forestry to the table to discuss how they're going to log a certain piece of land? What do they need to leave in place? What can they do that's going to help wildlife? We don't have those conversations. And whether that's on us somewhat, but I also think it's the forestry lobbyists that have created that thing. And I think the forest industry's put themselves in a position now where they're all scrambling because they don't have the supply, be it from forest fires, from beetles, whatever it is. The timber supply isn't there. And when you start looking at why does Tulco shut down their plant in Kelowna? They don't have log supplies, right? So I think, you've got to be smart about how we create those jobs, but we also need to be looking at how we harvest that timber, what's the benefits to wildlife, and how do we do both? I think we can find that balance in between where we can be successful, where forestry is actually doing stuff for wildlife. There used to be a lot of cut blocks where moose were doing really well before they started spraying. Moose populations were really good. So I think we've got to get those industry partners to the table, because that's one thing I see that's missing from when we had our summit. We had every other piece of the puzzle there, but we didn't have the industry piece there. So I think if we had industry there sitting down and talking with us, collaborating with us, I think that's the key piece. What does that look like on the landscape? I don't have all the answers to that, but I think it's a key piece into making our populations turn that table, make sure we're not fragmenting it, and make sure we're not developing those areas for housing. And obviously there's a housing crisis everywhere in the province, but how do we look at doing that and say, you know what, that's a good place for subdivision? No, you better leave that alone. That's sheep winter range, right? Those discussions don't happen. And whether it's municipal, regional districts, or provincial governments, or even potentially federal government, how do you bring all those pieces of the puzzle together? And we've all gone through this with trying to meet with government, and I think we're limited somewhat by, we're volunteers, so there's only so much time that we can do to make that follow up. And as hard as you try, it's tough to keep that continuous pressure, right? Like there's some days I go back, oh shit, I should have been doing this right away. And obviously I lean on you a lot to say, you know what, we need to get a meeting with X. But again, you've got a full plate doing what you're doing. So how do you put another piece onto what we're doing, right? We've created this monster, and now we've got to keep feeding it. So I think we need to do our part. That's the piece of education. I think where One Campfire comes in, and I think we need to have that outreach to industry as well.
Well, that's a heavy one. So I guess the last thing I was just going to touch on is investment in wildlife. We look at the U.S. and the Pittman-Robertson Act, where they invest heavily. There's hundreds of millions of dollars yearly that go, and it's an excise tax that hunters are paying effectively for wildlife, and it's a great program. It's worked really well, but to me there's a serious lack of investment in wildlife in BC. So provincially, Pittman-Robertson is a federal program. In British Columbia and Canada, we don't really have anything like that. Why don't we, or what can we do? What are some? We've got this two new Together for Wildlife paradigm shift, this new strategy, co-management, and um, how do we invest more? How do we get more money for wildlife? And because no money, no projects, right? Like and money isn't everything, but it's certainly something. And investing in wildlife is a big deal. So what can we do on that front?
That's a good question, Kyle. And like I said, I think it comes back to, if the general public of BC valued wildlife, then I think you can make that paradigm shift change with how government spends money. But, everybody's crying for housing, everybody's crying for medical, everything's in a crisis mode right now. So how do we elevate wildlife to be in a crisis mode in that sense, to elevate that piece? So I think that's our advocacy piece. Obviously, we're doing what we can with great support from our members for the amount of money that we put on the ground. But like you said, there's so much more we could do. And to me, it's everybody in BC. To me, I think I don't want to call it a tax, but we've kind of chatted about these different dynamics about whether if you're a skier, a golfer, a mountain biker, maybe it's a recreational license we need. Everybody in BC should have a recreational license to go on. If you're using Crown land for recreation, then you need to buy a recreational license, and it's 10, $15 a year, whatever it is. But then that money would go into HCTF, and then HCTF would disperse that money for those projects or whatever. It can't go into general coffers. Government's got to, we get taxed enough as it is, and with all our carbon taxes and all this other stuff that's going on. It's not that we want another tax. It's almost like a user pay. If you're going to use it, we should all be paying a little bit for it. We've chatted about license fees before, but why should hunters pay the whole front, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no mountain bike fee. Not that I'm picking on mountain bikers, but there's no fees for skiers that, those mountains, that's usually summer range for mule deer, right, where those mountains are. Yeah. So why can't skiers chip in a piece? Because that's all habitat, it's all usage. Could we get the federal government to kind of, Blaine Hawkins has talked about some sort of Pittman Robinson thing on outdoor gear, but would it encapsulate enough, for mountain bikes, camping gear? What would it look like, right? So, is that something the federal government would be interested in doing, and then reinvesting that into the provinces? All of them are great ideas. I just don't know how we get that next shift. How do we generate that piece, that belief?
Governments, they don't like to bring in extra fees or taxes, right? They that's not good for re-election, is it? It's not a good campaign. Yeah, we're going to start taxing you more.
You could have fooled me with the federal government.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair. Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's got to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
All these billions we give away or millions we give away.
Yeah.
But I think it's just up to us to message it to the non-hunting public that they need to do something. They need to advocate for it. So, how do we create that outreach, right? And you guys have got the brain power. One campfire. We're doing what we can, but I don't know how we create that big shift. And like you say, maybe Together for Wildlife might bring that around. It'll be really interesting to see what progresses, but I think we still got to advocate for what we want to advocate for, and we've got to affect politicians where we can, and affect the bureaucrats. And somehow the bureaucrats need to be accountable, because they're the ones that are doing all that piecing behind the scenes.
Yeah, well said. All right, this is a long one. I don't want to take too much more of your night, but before we wrap up, what's the plan for the fall? What are you doing what's your hunt plan?
Mike's got us booked in. We're flying in somewhere. I have no idea. We're he's joking around on Spike Camp, right? I said, Mike organized the trip. He just tells me where to show up and when, right? So, yeah, we're flying in. He's Mac and his buddy. So Mike's son, Mac, is flying in with one of his buddies. They're going in for 2 weeks or 10 days just before me and Jakab. So I'm taking Jakab. He's never been on a hunt before with me. So
is he pretty stoked?
I'm not sure if he is or he isn't.
Yeah.
He's pretty laid back. You know what he's like. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
But But yeah, it should be a pretty good eye opener for him. We're flying in, and then we're boat, so moose, caribou. There's sheep in the area, so
Nice.
so yeah, 2 weeks in the mountains and
What's your dates for that?
mid-September. So mid-September to end October, or
Okay.
beginning of October. Sorry.
Get your woolies out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
about time
awesome.
to get cold.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's it. Should be fun. Should be some good fishing, but I think I need to get our asses out and go hiking around and see if I can find a caribou.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, well, it's some of the best meat out there is good caribou meat if it's not too heavy in the rut.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah.
caribou, antelope, it's all been good. Like, I remember eating my first antelope. We went with Billy, and he goes, we don't eat, dogs won't even eat that shit. Nice. I was cutting up. I'm looking at it, this looks pretty good sheep meat to me. I got it home. We devoured that antelope, I think, in less than 3 months.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's good meat. All the meats, like, my kids grew up on all game meat. It was crazy. They
Right.
didn't know any different at the time, right?
What's your favorite?
Sheep.
Is it?
Yeah.
Stone or like thin horn or
Stone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think they're just a bit better grass. The big one's a bit sagey. They have that
yeah.
sagey flavor. The doll was good, and so was the stones.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, elk's good, moose is good, but
Yeah.
buffalo's a pretty close second to sheep, I think, though.
Is that right? Eh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Well, sir, thank you so much for doing this. Just awesome to connect, and took a little bit of different direction today, talking about your hunting, because we always talk projects, because as our projects chair, you're so busy in that. It's always good to catch up on that, but today I want to hit a little bit more on the hunting stuff, because you always got so many bloody good stories. Always good for an hour of laughing. So
Oh yeah, there's been a few, I can tell you. Like, some of the horse trips have just been, like I said, there's some good memories there. I think we used to take a video camera. I got to find out where those VHSs are. There's some pretty funny shit in there too.
VHS, you're really starting to date
Oh,
yourself,
yeah.
buddy. For the youngsters listening to this, they'll be like, they talked about some VHS thing. What is that?
Yeah.
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 That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
No
And
problem. You're off sheep hunting next week, aren't you?
yeah.
This week.
Yeah. I leave on Friday, and going to go and chase the white sheep around the mountains, or at least look for one anyway. So
That's going to be a great trip. That's beautiful country up there.
yeah, really, really excited about it, and yeah, hopefully have a few stories when I come back to chat
Yeah.
about. So
Yeah, it's in the sheep mountains, right? Once you're in the mountains, in the mountains. Once it's in your blood, it's in your blood, right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. Well, we'll do it again soon.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me. It's great.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Appreciate it. And next time we'll have you back. And we got to have you back. Maybe you have Jakab on. We'll talk about your caribou, sheep, moose, elk, whatever else you guys are chasing this fall.
There might be goats up there, too.
Oh, the goats. There we go.
Goats,
So,
the goat nemesis.
yeah, yeah,
We didn't even touch on goats. We'll leave that for another story.
yeah. There's a few there too. Awesome, Chris. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Cal.